Greetings, friends. Some of the most amazing tools inside of Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic's masking panel are brand new inventions, and others are updated versions of older features. The linear gradient tool is actually just a new name and an updated look for the graduated filter that many of us have been using since 2008. Let me jump right into my Lightroom catalog now, and let me show you why the linear gradient tool remains such a great feature for landscape photographers like me. When we use the linear gradient tool, we are telling Lightroom that we want to change one side of our photograph and then to fade whatever changes we're making off so that the other side of our image remains unaffected. Usually, when we use this tool in a typical landscape photograph, we will tell the program that we want to change the top part of our image without affecting the bottom. The concept is easy, and I promise that I will show you how this works on a real image in just a few minutes. But stick with me here as I explain this tool's semi-complicated mechanics. To create a mask using the linear gradient, I'm going to tap here on this little circle, which is the symbol for Classic's new Masks panel. Next, I'm going to tap here to activate the linear gradient tool. When I do this, my cursor will turn into a little cross. To draw out a gradient, I need to press and hold down on the left button on my mouse. As I drag down across the screen with that mouse button held down, Lightroom will draw out 3 lines and a red overlay. When I release the left mouse button, these lines will stay on the screen and a couple of additional marks will appear on them. Before I get into what these lines and dots represent, let me remind you that this red colored overlay is something that we can see with any of our masking tools as long as the show overlay option is active and when the overlay choice is set to the color overlay mode. I'm going to disable the show overlay command for just a second here so that we can focus on these lines and these symbols. The line at the top of the screen, the one with the red circle in its middle. This line appears at the place where my cursor was positioned when I began to hold down the left button on my mouse. I like to call this line the 100% mark because it indicates the upper edge of the transition zone that this gradient layer will make. If I were to drag the exposure slider down to -4, for example here, then everything from the line with the red dot at the top up to the very top of my screen will get that entire -4 stop change. The same is true for all the sliders or for any combination of sliders in here. If I were to change things up and drag the temperature slider instead all the way over to blue, then you can see that from the red dot line up to the top of the frame, everything turns dark blue. Next, if you look at the space between the red line and the middle line, then you can see that the strength of this blue wash is starting to fade away. The middle line represents the halfway point between the changed and unchanged parts of this image. The middle line, the one with the black dot, is the 50% mark between the altered and unaffected parts of this image. Continuing on down the screen, the white dot line marks the end of the change this masking layer would make. Once I have a linear gradient on top of my image, then I can continue to modify this command. Now that we have these mechanics out of the way, let's switch over to an image that I captured a few years ago here in Montana. Before I started recording this video, I did everything that I could using all of Lightroom Classic's global tools to fine-tune this image. Using all the global controls down here, I was able to turn this into this. I'm pleased with the overall image, and now I want to target some additional changes to the top of the sky. To do that, I'm going to tap here to open up the masking panel. Next, I'm going to activate the linear gradient tool, and now I'm going to hold the Shift key down on my keyboard, and then I'm going to drag out a transition zone from about here down to here. I'm going to drag it out here because it's this light blue area at the top of the sky that I really want to change. When I release the left button on my mouse, I'll get my red line, my midline, and my white dot line at the bottom of the transition zone that I just created. Now, dragging out the gradient tells Lightroom where I want the changes that this mask is going to make to occur. Next, I need to come over here to the masking panel and adjust these sliders to tell the program what kind of changes I want it to make. To make the top of the sky more blue, I'll drag the temperature slider down. I'll also change the exposure. I'll change the contrast. Maybe I'll adjust the highlights and the shadows. That looks good, but I think that I want this change to extend a little further down towards the horizon. To expand my gradient, I'm going to click and drag from the bottom line, from the white dot right here, to make my transition zone a little bit longer. Let's see how this looks now. To compare this photo with what we had before we added the gradient, I can tap on this light switch here to turn off all of the masks in this panel. Before, after. Ooh, I love it. Adding blue and making the top of the sky darker gives this image more of a twilight feel. And it also pushes my eye down towards the warm colors of the sunset near the horizon. Thanks to the linear gradient tool, this improvement was fast and easy. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you learned something today, then please hit the subscribe button and leave us a like or a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next tutorial.